As Russia's drone strikes intensify, Ukraine has had to innovate to survive. It's adjusted its tactics, embraced emerging technologies, and developed groundbreaking weapons and equipment to withstand and fend off Russia's Shahed swarms. Now, it's even modifying and modernizing decades-old military vehicle designs, upgrading US-supplied Bradleys to make them more drone-resistant and leaving US generals stunned in the process. More than 300 Bradley fighting vehicles, or BFVs, have been sent to Ukraine. Designed to transport infantry and scouts while providing strong armor protection and the ability to suppress enemy troops and destroy armored vehicles, the BFV is a highly versatile vehicle. Its history dates back to the 1960s, when initial planning and design work began, and its development was strongly influenced by the Soviet BMP infantry fighting vehicle, which entered service in 1966 and rapidly became one of the most popular and widely adopted designs of the time. The BMPs combined the firepower of a light tank with the mobility of an armored personnel carrier, and they massively strengthened the Soviet army. The US wanted something similar but superior, a vehicle that could safely transport troops across difficult and dangerous terrain while packing enough firepower to take out enemy tanks. The design phase lasted nearly 2 decades, with the first BFVs rolling off the production lines in 1981 and entering service the same year. Since then, Bradleys have gone on to become integral and invaluable elements of America's ground forces, with thousands produced and put to work in conflicts like the Gulf War and Iraq War. Numerous BFV variants have also been produced over the years to ensure the Bradley remains relevant and aligned with modern military standards, ranging from the original M2 model all the way up to the most recent release, the M2A4E1, unveiled in 2024. Ukraine uses the M2A2 variant, which was introduced in 1988. It may not be the most modern BFV, but the M2A2 remains a strong and solid performer, even in modern military conditions, blending mobility, survivability, and firepower in equal measure to make it well suited for a broad range of missions and conflict conditions. It's fitted with a 600 horsepower engine and an HMPT 503 hydromechanical transmission, giving it a top speed of 35 miles per hour. Thanks to this, the M2A2 can mostly keep pace with the various tanks and other vehicles in use among Ukraine's ground forces, and it's a highly agile vehicle, more than capable of tackling tough terrain, fording shallow rivers, and weaving its way across cluttered battlefield landscapes. Firepower-wise, the M2A2 comes equipped with a 25mm M242 Bushmaster chain gun and BGM-71 TOW anti-tank missiles. The Bushmaster can fire at a rate of 200 rounds a minute, with an effective range of 6,600 feet or 2,000 meters. It's reliable, accurate, and impactful when it comes to suppressing enemy troops or damaging and destroying lightly armored vehicles and aerial targets. The BGM-71 missiles, meanwhile, rank among the most widely used anti-tank guided missiles in the world, with a proven track record of success and more than enough explosive power to take out a vast array of enemy tanks and armored vehicles. As far as defense goes, the M2A2 Bradley boasts aluminum steel composite armor and stronger protection for those on board compared to prior versions. It can withstand hits from 30mm APDS rounds, RPGs, and other anti-armor weapons, with a semicircular shield fitted to the rear of the turret and the option to mount explosive reactive armor for additional defenses too. Overall, it's agile, flexible, and more than capable of both withstanding and dishing out damage on the battlefield, all while carrying 7 troops plus a 3-man crew. It's no surprise then that BFVs have proven exceedingly popular with the armed forces of Ukraine, who have used these vehicles in completely different ways than the US Army, as revealed by defense expert and former US Marine Corps Colonel Mark Kansian, who told Business Insider, "There's no question that the Ukrainians seem to be using it differently from the way the US Army would use it. They're using it much more in a scouting role, in a light tank role, than as an infantry fighting vehicle." Thanks to that, BFVs have dealt huge amounts of damage to Russian hardware, helped Ukraine's forces dig in and defend valuable patches of land, and gained iconic status among the Ukrainian troops, with many crediting the Bradley for keeping them alive. There have been countless videos, images, and frontline reports over the course of the conflict detailing the Bradley's successes. In late 2023, for example, during battles for the small Donetsk village of Avdiivka, drone video footage captured an M2 taking out no fewer than 3 Russian MT-LB armored vehicles, one after another, raining fire upon them with its 25mm cannon and blowing them away in under a minute. Other reports around the same time revealed how M2s were being used to kill dozens upon dozens of Russian troops, forcing them out of basement hideouts or trapping them inside and helping Ukraine's forces assert control over the area. However, despite their many benefits, M2A2s aren't perfect. They were produced back in the 1980s after all, so weren't made with modern-day drone warfare conditions in mind. That's not to say they're incapable of withstanding drone strikes. Indeed, there have been numerous documented cases of Bradleys in Ukraine taking direct or indirect drone hits while suffering only minimal damage. In June 2024, for example, the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade of Ukraine shared a video of one of its Bradley fighting vehicles equipped with reactive armor tiles taking an FPV drone strike to its body but continuing to drive along a dusty dirt path without stopping or slowing down even slightly. In the accompanying post on Telegram, the 47th Brigade spoke about how American Bradleys give them the edge over their enemies. During the 2 years of the Great War, the Russian army lost 150 armored personnel carriers and infantry fighting vehicles per month. However, in May 2024, the figure increased to 288 units. And these are only confirmed losses, the publication writes. One reason is that numerous losses of armoured vehicles forced the Russians to use older and less protected models, while the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade uses powerful American Bradley infantry fighting vehicles. We constantly try to show videos of our crew's work in the best quality because it's important not only to remind once again that Ukrainians know how to fight effectively with any foreign equipment, but also to confirm this clearly. In the video, you can see how the BFV works on enemy infantry. On the way back, the vehicle is hit by an FPV drone. As you can already understand, the crew did not even notice this and continued moving. More recently, another similar situation was seen near the city of Pokrovsk, where a Russian drone locked onto a Ukrainian M2A2 and made a beeline for an open hatch at the rear of the vehicle. The drone operator slightly misjudged his flight path, with the drone crash landing onto the ground right beside the Bradley instead. It exploded seconds later, but the Bradley's rear bumper and outer armor absorbed the impact entirely, leaving the crew completely unharmed. Unfortunately, Bradleys don't always survive Russian drone strikes and other attacks. Ukraine is estimated to have lost at least 177 BFVs in total, according to data from the open source intelligence analysts at Oryx, with videos and images revealing at least one scrapyard filled with the wreckage and remnants of Bradleys that were left irreparable after damage from Russian drones, missiles, and more. But unlike Russia, Ukraine doesn't like to make a habit of wasting the hardware at its disposal. It's repeatedly shown over the course of this war that it prefers to make the most of its military equipment, extracting as much value as possible from every drone, missile, vehicle and system, especially those provided by allies like the US. That's why Ukraine has recently started upgrading its remaining Bradleys with an innovative new armor package, enhancing their survivability and giving the Russians a serious new challenge to overcome. The new armor is codenamed Tower 1 and has already been installed on several vehicles, including those being used by the 47th Mechanized Brigade. It was created by the Ukrainian company Iron Nuts, which specializes in additional armor for military vehicles like metal cages to guard against anti-tank weapons. Iron Nuts shared a video of Tower 1 in action on its Instagram page, along with a caption, "The first prototype of the tower protection and some related elements of the M2 Bradley, it was called Tower 1. Several combat vehicles were modified with elements from this development. We continue to improve. The prototype of Tower 2 is also installed, but we cannot show it yet. The enemy is watching, and these BFVs are especially interesting to him." As the post notes, Iron Nuts is already hard at work on the next evolution of this vehicle armor, Tower 2, which could even be stronger and tougher for Russians to crack. In the meantime, Tower 1 already looks like a terrific addition to Bradley fighting vehicles. It involves a rigid frame installed atop the body of the Bradley, with flexible mesh screens attached around the sides. This drastically reduces the penetration capabilities of any incoming enemy warheads or drones, while also making them more likely to deflect away from their initial trajectory and fail to successfully strike the Bradley's weaker areas, like the turret roof. In short, it gives the Bradley much stronger odds of surviving drone strikes and makes it far harder for the Russians to take these vehicles out. Concept images of Iron Nut's Tower 1 were initially seen in September of last year, but this is the first time the armor has been seen for real. A representative from the company has confirmed that Tower 1 has already been used in real-world battlefield conditions and has been successfully tested against cumulative hits. Additionally, the Iron Nuts team is constantly looking for new ways to refine and improve its design, so expect Tower 1 and its successor, Tower 2, to get better and better in the months to come, allowing Ukraine to get even more value out of its Bradley vehicles, dealing more damage to the Russians and mounting stronger defenses along the front lines. This certainly isn't the first time Ukraine's been seen adding armor to its military vehicles as a direct response to Russian drone attacks. The country's armed forces have also made some major changes to the M1 Abrams tanks it's received from the US in order to increase their survival rate in frontline encounters with the Russians. The M1 Abrams is widely regarded as one of the best main battle tanks in the world. However, just like the Bradley fighting vehicles, it was made in a time before drones. Because of that, the M1 has sometimes struggled on the battlefields of Ukraine, with Russian drone pilots quickly figuring out the tank's weak points and targeting them with kamikaze strikes. These tanks are worth around $10 million each, so Ukraine can't afford to simply allow Russian drones to take them out with ease. That's why they made some modifications. They installed specially made steel cages around the tank frames, essentially shielding the bodies of the tanks and their more fragile but critical components, like engines and turrets, against direct strikes from drones or anti-tank missiles. The cages were made by the Steel Front Initiative, which has also been responsible for retrofitting older Soviet-era T-72 and T-64 tanks with steel screens and cage armor, increasing their effectiveness and survivability in even the most difficult and dangerous of situations. Installation of the new cages began earlier this year, and so far 25 Abrams tanks have been upgraded with steel front armor as well as 75 Bradleys. Here's why these types of armor additions matter so much. Firstly, they're remarkably cost-effective. Iron Nuts hasn't revealed the exact cost of its Tower 1 units just yet, but the steel front cages are estimated at just $20,000 a unit. They're being attached to tanks and infantry fighting vehicles worth several $1 million each. Without a Tower 1 or steel front armor add-on, these vehicles can easily be damaged and destroyed by Russian drone and missile strikes, rendering them completely useless and leaving Ukraine with a massive gap in its defenses. With them, however, these vehicles have a much stronger chance of surviving on the battlefield, and even if they still eventually end up damaged or destroyed, they'll be able to deal more damage to the enemy and provide much more valuable support in key positions along the front lines. In other words, they add immense value to the vehicles they're installed on, and that's so vital for Ukraine. Because Ukraine isn't Russia. It doesn't have the same massive military budget and capacities. It can't simply set up gigantic new military production plants like Russia can and churn out hundreds of new tanks and infantry vehicles every year. It can't call on vast stocks of Soviet hardware from the past to bolster its ranks when other vehicles are damaged or destroyed. And while it gets plenty of invaluable support and aid from its allies across Europe and North America, it doesn't have an infinite supply of vehicles and weaponry to call upon. It's a relatively small country compared to Russia, with a relatively small stock of military vehicles, and it has to make each one count. And right now, with Russia using more drones than ever before to not only attack Ukraine cities and civilian infrastructure like schools and hospitals, but also to strike frontline targets like tanks and armored vehicles, Ukraine's armor is under bigger threat than ever before. Any tanks or infantry vehicles positioned near the front lines are at risk of being targeted and blown up in the blink of an eye. All it takes is a well-placed kamikaze drone strike and millions of dollars of hardware can go up in flames. And when Russia successfully takes out Ukrainian vehicles, it weakens their defensive position, opening gaps in the front lines and funneling its forces through those gaps to capture more land. This is one of the ways in which the Kremlin has been making gains over the summer, using the likes of glide bombs and drone swarms to overwhelm Ukrainian defenses. Thankfully, through a mixture of remarkable resilience and clever tactics, Ukraine's forces are still digging in and defending the areas that matter most, gathering their tanks and vehicles in key positions to fend off Russian assaults. But they need all the help they can get, and additional armor boosts like Tower 1 can make all the difference. And these systems are also rapid to install. Steel front cages, for example, can be fitted in just 12 hours. And while exact installation times for Tower 1 have not yet been revealed, it's likely they don't take too long to fit either. Thanks to that, entire fleets of vehicles can be upgraded in a timely fashion. It's also important to differentiate between Ukraine's specially made armor add-ons like Tower 1 and the more makeshift modifications Russia's been seen resorting to in order to strengthen its vehicle defenses. For example, a so-called monster turtle Russian tank was recently spotted, sporting a ridiculous amount of spikes, wire and mesh armor laid all over its body from top to bottom. It looked like a complete mess, and while it may provide some level of protection against Ukrainian drone attacks, it comes at a huge cost for the Russians. When they throw random pieces of sheet metal and weld spikes to their tanks and vehicles in this way, they can make them much heavier, harder to maneuver, and even unsafe for those on board, since it becomes very difficult for the crew to get in and out of the tank. And if crews aren't able to evacuate burning or damaged tanks quickly, they can pay the ultimate price. That's exactly what happened near the city of Toretsk, when a Russian porcupine tank covered in spiky armor was targeted by a swarm of Ukrainian drones. The spikes managed to stop some of the drones, but in the end they found a way through. The soldiers on board tried to make an escape, but it was so difficult for them to get safely out and onto the ground, they were nothing but sitting ducks for Ukraine's 28th Mechanized Brigade, who easily took them out one by one. This is a big issue with makeshift armor add-ons. They can increase a vehicle's survivability, but without specialist design, they often have huge flaws. Specially made armor packages, meanwhile, like Tower 1 and steel front mesh cages, are crafted by experts who know exactly what they're doing. They look closely at the measurements and technical specifications of the vehicles they're working on, finding the best ways to bolster their defenses without introducing new risks for the crew or passengers on board. They create cages and steel shields that can withstand drone hits but still allow soldiers to get in and out of the vehicle with ease, and carefully balance the weight distribution of their new additions so that the vehicles can still move and maneuver without any drastic changes. In short, they make armor that brings as many benefits and as few downsides as possible, and they constantly seek to fine-tune their designs over time. With Tower 1 already in action and Tower 2 in the works, there's no telling how much tougher Ukraine's Bradley fighting vehicles could become. And with stronger, better protected vehicles in its arsenal, the Ukrainian army should find it significantly easier to not only defend valuable cities and pieces of territory, but fight back against the invaders and perhaps even reclaim lost land in the coming weeks and months as well. Now, find out more about Ukraine's awesome new armor add-ons in our recent video, revealing how the Ukrainian army is using rubber armor to absorb dozens of drone impacts without taking a single scratch. Alternatively, to learn about the Ukrainian army's latest successes and Russia's major failures, check out our breakdown of how Russia's elite Crimean fighter jet fleet has gone from 12 jets to just 5 remaining. And finally, make sure you subscribe to our channel too, if you haven't already, so you can stay informed and up to date on all the latest Frontline news and developments.